Thank you guys for the introduction. I'm head of product design and brand at a company called The Dots. We're a London-based, don't hold that against me, London-based startup that Forbes has called a LinkedIn for creatives. So if you want to connect with other creators, entrepreneurs, or freelancers, or find your dream job, please check us out at thedots.com. Another thing you should know is I lived in New York for 20 years, so I hope you give 0 fucks that I'm probably going to say fuck a fucking lot. So there, all right. And I promise that if you are even super up to date on this topic, you will learn something new by slide 6. So count your slides. I don't know about you guys, but when the whole Facebook Cambridge Analytica scandal first hit the airwaves, thanks to the efforts of The Guardian, Channel 4 News, and the New York Times, I personally felt the full range of human emotions. And I'm sure you all did as well. Before we get into particulars about the scandal, I want to talk about the who. So let's hold on the what and the how and the why, but the who. So we have these two fucks in part to thank for the situation. Mark Zuckerberg, a tech bro who famously got inspired by Hot or Not in his college dorm. You can't not say that he did it in his college dorm to make Facebook. And it should come as no surprise to anyone that, given that, he doesn't understand the concept of consent one iota. And then we have Sheryl Sandberg, whose job was basically to monetize Facebook and generally to be the adult in the room. Can you imagine having that on your fucking business card? And until these two come up with a more disruptive business model than Senator, we sell ads, there isn't going to be any real fundamental change at the company because there will be no financial incentive at the company to make those changes. We also have this fucking nut, Alexander Kogan, then Alexander Spector, and then back to Kogan to make it even more James Bondsy. He was a data scientist who's still at Cambridge University, and he developed a quiz app. And if you take nothing else away from this talk, then please know that quiz apps are a tool of the devil, and don't take them. But anyway, created this thing called This Is Your Digital Life that was deployed on Facebook for research purposes. But then Kogan handed the app and its resultant data over to this smarmy motherfucker, who is a bloke by the name of Andrew Nix, who is the now ex-CEO of the now defunct Cambridge Analytica. This is him on stage at a conference called, I shit you not, the Rock Stars of Marketing or something like that. Anyway. Cambridge Analytica helped snooker 270,000 people on Facebook to take Kogan's quiz. And then 2 years later, in 2015, Facebook discovered that Kogan had shared the data with these guys. And then Facebook asked Cambridge Analytica very nicely to delete the data. And they said they did. And Facebook took their word for it. And plot twist, they fucking didn't. And what's more is that data is now free game on the wilds of the internet. If you were counting down, this is slide 6. CA was part of a sort of a web of companies with groups like Aggregate IQ and other firms connected to SCL, Strategic Communications Laboratories. And within that web, there are all sorts of easy connections to make with numerous shit weasels. So people like Donald Trump, Steve Bannon, Nigel Farage, Robert Mercer, real dickbag. He's a piece of work there. And these guys used a lot of the data that we're talking about in the 2016 US presidential race and the Brexit referendum. And I think it's fair to say that scum attracts scum. The fact that there are essentially dozens of these shell companies within this web means that we can't really celebrate that CA has got their comeuppance because they're all probably safely tucked away in other groups by now. Total fucking shell game. And so if you are wondering what you were supposed to learn on this slide, it's that Boogle is apparently what you call a group of weasels. I didn't know that. I had to look it up. So 87 million, that's a big number, right? So Facebook, in their estimation, have said that that's how many people were potentially affected, right? So the reason why that number goes from 270,000 of people that actually took the quiz to people that were that had their data harvested is basically because back in the day, in Zuckerberg and Sandberg's infinite wisdom, they were like, yeah, no, it's not just your data that companies can sort of learn from when you interact with them, but the data of your friends. And now they've changed that policy, they've changed some of the settings and stuff, but damage is done in this case. So that's a big number. Keep that big number in mind because it's more than the population of Germany, or the UK, or France, and it's quite a bit more than the population of Myanmar, where content on Facebook has been linked by the United Nations to genocide. So well done there. Anyway, let's take a bit of a deep breath there. Let's not go there. Stay focused. But surprise, surprise, that number, the 87 million, is bigger. People at Cambridge Analytica have testified to Parliament that there were tons of other apps and quizzes, particularly something called Sex Compass. Anyone? Anyone? Oh, yeah. Yeah. Chris, I'm going to call you Sex Compass for the rest of the night. Anyway, a few more numbers. So that figure is the number of data points that Facebook has on its users. And that includes all sorts of stuff. Your name, your gender, check-ins, credit card info, pokes. They're even keeping track of pokes. I thought even Facebook didn't give a shit about pokes. But basically, some of this data you can remove. Some of it you can't. Some of it makes sense from a security point of view. Some of it doesn't. Never, ever let a company trick you into believing that there's a dichotomy between privacy and security. There isn't. Or privacy and convenience. There isn't. These things don't have to be mutually exclusive. And if some company is telling you that they are, it's because their business model is corporate surveillance. The most salient thing that came out of Zuckerberg's congressional hearings was during his exchange with a Congressman, Ben Lujan, a Democrat in New Mexico. And during that, Zuckerberg confirmed that Facebook even has 1,500 data points on people that aren't even on the platform, right? And these are what people have called shadow profiles, which is a particularly nasty bit of dark UX. So if you're one of these people that Facebook has a shadow profile for, guess what you have to do to find out what information they have on you?
Guess a Facebook account?
You have to fucking sign up. Well done. Mic drop. So well done there. Joe's going to be talking a bit about GDPR as well, but I wanted to just sort of put up a list of the rights that we have incoming thanks to GDPR. And if you spend any time reading them in detail, essentially, this is the closest we're ever going to have to an Internet Bill of Rights. Consider this sort of draft 1 of that. And before Facebook rolled out their GDPR screens, they previewed them with a bunch of journalists. And there was a guy, Josh Constein at TechCrunch, who wrote this fantastic, blistering takedown called "A Flaw-by-Flaw Guide to Facebook's GDPR Privacy Changes." So let's talk about what those mistakes are. First up is the controls that they're giving you for your sensitive profile information. This contains stuff like sexual preference, religious views, political views. And as you see at each of those steps, you can hit the pretty blue button to accept and continue, whether or not you've scrolled through the information and actually read it. Or if you do manage to hit the ugly gray button called Manage Settings, you have to go through this interstitial where Facebook makes its argument trying to deter you from removing the info before letting you make and save your choices. It's one of these things that's obviously designed to get users to breeze through it by offering no resistance, but friction if you actually do want to make changes. So sad face, angry face, very angry. Facebook's bringing its facial recognition material back to Europe and Canada. Irish data protection commissioners banned it in the EU back in 2012, and users of these countries will basically get a chance to turn it on, which is the default if you sort of speed through this. But the real problem here is the granularity and the lack thereof. So one of the things that's enshrined in GDPR is that you're supposed to have very specific and very direct controls over things. And basically with Facebook's facial recognition stuff, it's all or nothing. So if you want to get warnings about people possibly impersonating you, or but not be suggested when people sort of put photos up, you can't. It's just all or nothing. Data collection, major concern that's come out of Zuckerberg's testimonies is how Facebook's using the data that they collect from you around the web to target users with ads, not just to optimize its service, but the sort of ads that you're getting from other companies. And a lot of it's sort of off-site collection via things like buttons, share buttons, their conversion pixel, their audience network ad service. If you sort of go into this stuff, you can, and I did this the other day, you can basically get rid of a lot of the stuff that other advertisers can use to target you, but you can't control how Facebook still uses that data. So again, it's one of those weird all or nothing situations where they're sort of putting themselves in a privileged position above other companies. New terms of service. I don't know if you guys can even see that blown up on this massive projection, but you see that "See Your Options" text link there? That's what you have to press if you want to really get into exploring the terms and service, and if you want to try to close your account. And so, this, again, in terms of sort of dark patterns and such, this is about Facebook trying to minimize the visibility of that path to account deletion, rather than making it obvious as an action that you can take if you don't agree to the terms. And this is what you get if you do click that sort of "See My Options" link. So they'll throw you directly into account deletion. which makes it sound super fucking scary, versus just sort of deactivating your account and having that sort of degree of difference between them. And the other thing is that if you do, but before they sort of let you delete your account, they prompt you to download your data, and you absolutely should. But that process in and of itself can actually take hours, and you might not actually come back to complete the action in that regard. So again, some pretty shady shit there. The privacy shortcuts, yay, thumbs up. They're doing a pretty good job with this. And they've, all the stuff that they were doing to make the things that they don't want you to click, but make that ugly so that you don't engage with it. Here, they're sort of being quite a bit more fair, so something nice to be said for them. And another thing that they're doing reasonably well is, and another thing that's part of GDPR is this sort of sentiment of data portability. So above and beyond this idea of downloading your information, being able to use it in other places. So they're getting that first part really well. So that ability to download your information. Further, they're making it so you don't even have to download the information. You can interact with it directly in the platform, which is great. However, the data portability part of that is pretty rubbish. So if you do download your information, what you're supposed to be able to do with that in terms of data portability is you're supposed to be able to take it to another company, potentially a competitor. So, hey, Google Plus. Anyone remember fucking Google Plus? No, no one does. In a world where you're sort of, going where you're up to snuff with GDPR's spirit and letter of the law, you would be able to, that data would be much more interoperable, and you'd be able to use it to populate networks and on other services. What Facebook is doing is basically exporting your social graph and your friends as a dumb text file, with you can't really do much of anything with, and another service can't do much of anything with. So, how many of you have friends named John Smith? Anyone? Yeah, good luck. So I think, as I start to come into the close here, the things that we have to keep in mind to avoid falling prey to, committing similar dark UX mistakes ourselves, so we really have to design for trust. Fantastic designer Cheryl Kadaba at Artifact Group in the US wrote a great article recently called "It's Time to Start Designing for Transparency." I'd argue that it's about designing for trust, but you guys should all read that article. Amber Case has written recently about the same topic on Medium and TechCrunch. My friend Dan Hahn likes to talk about designing for trust in terms of designing for negative outcomes, so anticipating how bad actors are going to use what you've created. But these are all excellent points. Grab a photo of them, etch them into your hearts, get a tattoo over your chest. Good idea. Because if you can't design for trust, then I would kindly ask you to go zuck yourself.